for 30 plus years in Atlanta. And I have a specialty kind of working with service firms, and a lot of those are attorneys, but basically I'm a generalist and I can help anybody personally or if it's in their business. And I just wanted to say that Cherish and I have loved doing this. When we started doing this, we were all in person in my office and kind of like a round table, which we miss so much, but we're really hoping that that's going to come back and that you'll have the opportunity to come here and do that with us sometime soon. But we really appreciate you being with us today. And we're very excited that Kathryn Burmeister is going to speak with us today, and I'll let her introduce herself. But also, she has just released a book, and I hope that she'll talk about that too. It's a very exciting time. So thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you guys for having me. So my name is Kathryn Burmeister. I more pertinent to this conversation, I'm a personal injury attorney. I opened my own practice in 2018 and have been fully remote and virtual since the inception of my firm. So when COVID hit, it was really not a big change for me. The biggest change was networking. So networking virtually is what I've been doing. Quite frankly, I really like that, being somebody that lives in North Metro Atlanta and not having to travel down. I appreciate seeing people in person, but it definitely makes things more efficient. And for anybody who owns their own business, or even if you don't, you understand time is money a lot of times. So it's nice to have the efficiency aspect of it. So I'm going to talk to you today about running a remote practice, whether you own it or not. I think you can take things away from this. And I really want it to be an organic conversation. So I have a Q&A time at the end, but if you have questions as we go along, or if you want to have a more in-depth conversation at the end, that's what I'm hoping. Be thinking about things that you want to talk about, maybe things that are happening in your practice that you want to change, or ideas that you have, anything like that. I'm happy to discuss that at the end, and think it'd be good to have us bounce ideas off of each other. Okay. Do we want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, or if we want to just do quick introductions.
Everybody. Okay,
everybody.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Kevin, why don't you go next?
Yeah.
Sure. Morning, everyone. Kevin Rubin, founding partner, Markle Rubin Family Law. I am a family law and divorce litigator. I do divorce work, prenups, postnups, anything related to family law, which often people ask me if I do estate planning. I'm like, no, I don't do that. That's not part of what I do. Cherish does that. So they always do that. I don't know why. But we're based, we're in the North Metro area too, Cumberland area, and relatively, I'd say, small divorce firm. But we focus on the high net worth, upper middle class, yada yada. Looking forward to hear. I'm excited to hear this because I want to integrate new technology into my practice as much as possible, and I keep looking on the internet, and it's like if you have a cough or something, you look on the internet, you find a million things. So Kathryn, I'm so excited to hear what you have.
Great.
The last couple of years. So thank you.
And Kevin just got is it an award or is it a certificate? Like, what is it? Tell us.
So yeah, I know. I didn't want to. So we were just on another call, but I was admitted earlier this week as a fellow in the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, AML. It is I don't want to be too braggy. Again,
it's the creme de la creme. There's
like 30 to 40 of us in Georgia, and we're the top family lawyers, and it was a huge honor. My partner David is in it, and it's exciting. I've been on cloud nine all week, and I've gotten a million emails, and I haven't gotten back to anyone on those, and I feel so bad. And then my wife posted on Facebook, and I haven't gotten a chance to like everybody's comment. So, but it's yes, thank you. It's yeah. I don't like to brag. I'm not that type of person, but it was thank you. It was a big honor, and I've been, no joke, I've been on cloud nine walking around like, hey, I won't do any work this week. I'm just gonna go and
awesome.
So it's not helpful, but yeah.
It's not right.
Thank you.
I can tell you're humble about it, which is great. So good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey, Gay, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Gaylyn McCarthy, and I am a bankruptcy attorney with KPPB Law. I focus my business primarily on small to medium-sized businesses and business owners. Because when a business goes south, it's not a big problem for the business, but for the owner who has probably guaranteed every debt of the business, it is a problem. So, and I appreciate being invited to join this. Cherish, I have heard so much about you from Donna Lang.
Yes, yeah, thank you, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It's nice to see, and I don't have tons of bankruptcy attorneys in my space, and so I'm also familiar with your law firm because of the Georgia GPABA. So,
And Sanjui, and
yeah, awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Manel?
If that's okay.
Yeah.
My name is Manel Shahimi. Manel like Chanel. It's just spelled weird. And then Shahimi is just she, he, me, like the pronouns. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I opened my own firm in 2017. Before that, I was managing partner at another firm. So all I've ever done is criminal defense, focusing on mostly a lot of DUIs and then major felonies. My office is in Roswell. I love what I do. I can't imagine doing anything other than having my own firm and helping people go through some of the most worst periods of their lives. And I've known Kathryn for several years, and she's one of my idols. I admire her greatly. So I'm excited to hear her speak. Anytime I can hear her speak, and y'all be jealous because I have a personal relationship with her, so I get to hear her speak a lot. And I like and I've struggled with the remote a little bit. I think there's always things that we can do better. Kevin, I'm kind of like you. I try to go online and find things and I get overwhelmed. So I, just like my clients, I would say 90% of my clients find me from word of mouth. That's what I appreciate with groups like this, because it's just, you guys are like the people that I would go to say, hey, what have you done differently to help your practice, especially with the remote and with trials just starting to pick up, emotions just starting to pick up, in-person things. I'm praying that the courts keep things as virtual as possible because it's been so convenient. There's no need for us to go sit in a jury box for 2 hours to make a status announcement. So I'm always eager to learn about new things to help my practice. And when it comes to technology, I come from a family of engineers. They took all those skills. I don't know. So anything I can learn from this would be great. And I'm really happy to be here. Cherish, I've heard about you from so many people. So I'm thankful to finally meet you. I think we emailed, but it was like 2 years ago. So I'm happy to be here and hope to learn from everybody. So.
Yes, yeah, Will loves you. And so that's how I heard, I first heard about you. But thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you.
Angelina, at least on my screen, is next.
Hey everyone, good morning. Angelina Whitaker with Blue Sky Law. I'm a business litigator. I work primarily with small and lower mid-market companies. I handle all kinds of business disputes, anything from your standard breach of contract dispute to partnership disputes, and actually several landlord-tenant cases as well. We've had a lot of landlord-tenant cases this year as a result of COVID issues, so those have been fun to work through. Some landlords I found have been definitely really open to working with their clients or their tenants, others unfortunately not so much. So it's been an interesting year in that space, and I'd like to kind of continue to see what happens with commercial real estate, particularly with office space as things kind of go. And it kind of goes hand in hand with our conversation today with remote working and what's going to work out for people and what's really going to be feasible in the long term. So me with remote working, I think my problem is I don't know what I don't know. I feel like I've just been doing as the best that I can do. And I feel like it's working for me right now, but I don't know what's out there and what's available. So I'm really interested to hear what Kathryn has to say. And perhaps she may have some really good new kind of good solutions for some problems that I didn't even realize was a problem yet. So really looking forward to hearing from Kathryn, but it's also really good to see everyone here. I think I'm really realizing that the Atlanta legal community is a very small community because I keep running into the same people, and I know pretty much almost everyone on this Zoom, and it's really nice to see lots of familiar faces. Thanks, Kathryn.
Thank you.
I think Barton's next. I'm making you next. Let's put it that
Sure.
way.
Good morning, Barton Black. I'm at Blue Sky Law with Angelina as well. I am the employment partner. So I help businesses grow and manage their risk through traditional employment, handbooks, internal processes, and then also do litigation and all that. So wage and hour, discrimination, and then do a lot of non-compete litigation and drafting contracts around that to help protect clients' assets, customers, and really work with them to, like Angelina said, most of our clients are small, mid-sized businesses. So we're always have an eye on positioning them for an exit. And having lawsuits and having loose ends is never good for a transaction. And so we like to be pragmatic advisors and help our clients think about growing and exiting if that's going to be their next step. The remote practice is definitely something I'm interested as well. Kind of like Kevin said, I poked around a lot. We still have this like tabs billing system, and we have a server where our documents are that we have to remote into through Windows Terminal. And if Comcast goes down, we can't get our documents. So everything we're going to talk about is very relevant as our relatively new firm is growing. So happy to be here. Thanks to Cherish and June for putting this on.
About Moran next.
Good morning, everyone. I am Moran Clark, and I'm the managing attorney of Clark Law LLC, which is a boutique law firm in Buckhead. We have criminal defense, family law, and corporate law as our practice areas. I do family law, and I want to congratulate Kevin Rubin on that honor because it is certainly a distinction in the family law field. I see several familiar faces. Thank you, Cherish and June, for inviting me. Good to see Kathryn and Angelina again today. And as a family law attorney, I think Kevin has pretty much covered what our practice usually involves. We do prenuptial agreements, divorces, child support, custody, legitimation, and pretty much anything that falls into family law except for estate planning. I get that question a lot as well. So our practice in terms of family law helps people navigate their relationships better. Our criminal defense practice involves prosecution and also public defender services that we provide in small municipalities in the greater Atlanta metro area. And we also have our own private practice for criminal defense where we represent individuals that don't reside in those places, where we're contracted as a prosecutor or a public defender. In our corporate law practice, we advise small businesses in terms of having them get incorporated, as well as doing initial documents that they may have to have as a part of that. So those are our three practice areas. Again, I'm glad to be here. I met Kathryn about 2 weeks ago, I believe, at another meeting, and really excited to hear about the tips that she has for remote work. We have tried to do remote work since the pandemic started, and it's been going relatively well, but I'm always interested in learning ways to improve. So glad to be here, and thank you all again for inviting me.
Welcome.
Kristen, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Kristen Rajagopal. Please excuse me for being off video today. I'm trying to live that remote working lifestyle. I'm in Utah at the moment. Wearing an entire ski suit, so not Zoom appropriate. Quick shout out to June, who I personally think is the best banker in Atlanta, banker for my law firm, and does such a great job. And Cherish, who is an excellent estate planner, I know because I am also an estate planner. My law firm focuses on estate planning, flat fee estate planning for busy working families. I focus on will and trust planning, as well as probate and estate administration. I do some business work, but I leave the complex stuff to Cherish. Barton and Angelina, I'm a good friend of Mitesh Patel, so it's so nice to see you guys, see your faces. And for you family law attorneys out there, I completely sympathize with being asked to practice outside of your area of expertise. I had a client the other day try to strong arm me into reviewing his divorce settlement, which I politely declined and then declined again. So June and Cherish, thanks for inviting me. And I'm excited, Kathryn, to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Kristen. I hope you're having a good time there. And I have some information for you that I'm going to send you later today. And Kristen's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah, I definitely support that you're doing this while skiing. This is amazing. Thank you for being our example. Erin, how about you?
Hi all, my name is Erin Elliott. I too am not able to turn on the video right now. I'm not skiing though, I'll say. But I've known Cherish for a while. I appreciate the invite to this, and it's definitely relevant in my practice. I'm an immigration attorney, and I practice family and business immigration. So our niche is kind of representing entrepreneurs, a lot of tech companies here in Atlanta. And thankfully, most of my practice was already set up to work virtually. And a lot of my clients don't want to come in person anyway, but it certainly created issues for those of us that did want to be in the office. So again, thanks for having me.
And Erin, I've known her for a while, and she is fantastic, very kind, and she does a great job for the clients that I do send her way. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I think, was that everybody, Kathryn?
That's everybody that I see.
Perfect.
Yeah, at the end of this too, I plan on, like I said, having a conversation for those of you that jumped on a minute late or so, but also I want to send out kind of a mini white paper about the specific programs that I use, to the extent that that's helpful. Again, you'll obviously have to take your practice into consideration, but I still think you can take away from it and not have to go through the same process and reinvent the wheel. So if you want to, I'm sure, Cherish, you have all the emails, right? So we'll be able to get that out to you guys.
Yes, and definitely, I mean, we just want this to be the starting point, because like I said, June and I love throwing a good party, and you know, you are part of our inner circle because we know and respect, you know, we like and respect you. And so just, you know, we want this to be the start of a good relationship, not with only us, but the other people who are on this call as well too.
Definitely. So, okay, well, let's get started.
Let me know when you want me to launch the poll, Kathryn.
I will.
Okay.
Let me make sure. All right. I just want to ask me to choose the window versus the program. Let's go with this.
Okay.
All right. Do you see my face?
Yes, I love that picture.
Okay. Let me get to the beginning of my slides. So as I mentioned, today I just want to talk to you guys about running a remote practice, but really it comes down to working smarter, not harder. And I've been a big proponent of that even when I wasn't working remotely. Time is something we're never going to get more of. So to the extent that we can work more efficiently, and then also all the benefits that come along with that, I am a huge proponent of it. So as Cherish mentioned earlier, I am a newly published author as of March 15th. You can purchase my book, Overcoming Addiction to the Status Quo, on Amazon. It is currently in Kindle and physical copy, and I'm working on doing a audiobook. So down the road. And then I've also been speaking about different topics. The legal field, self-care in particular is a big passion of mine. And then also business, just running a business generally and being a female entrepreneur. So the topics I want to cover today, give you a little bit of my background, aside from just the fact that I'm a personal injury lawyer now. What really was the tipping point for me in terms of starting my own practice? So, you know, it wasn't just COVID for me, but what led me to make that decision and then do it remotely. Breaking that new ground, really starting out on an area that's still relatively, I won't say it's new, but not a lot of people do it, right? I think we're still very much married to the old ways of our profession. Leading me to my next point, antiquated profession. It's probably, I would say more so than the medical field in terms of how we run our practices. It's just very old school thinking. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, except for the fact that I think it really holds people back in their ability to run practice that they want to for themselves, as opposed to the other way around. Maybe you're asking yourself, why change now? Aside from the COVID part, I have some reasons for that. Specifics about how to work smarter, and then a Q&A and a couple final thoughts that I have. So in case you didn't know at this point, my name is Kathryn Burmeister. When I was growing up, I didn't have anybody in my family that was in the legal profession. So I am kind of one of those, I guess, fun little children that decided in middle school she wanted to be a lawyer, and I was hell bent on it. So what really influenced me was I was a big reader, still am in my spare time, but reading A Letter from a Birmingham Jail and To Kill a Mockingbird were two pieces of work that really influenced me. Even though MLK is obviously not a lawyer or wasn't a lawyer, the idea of standing for what's just really resonated with me. And then obviously in To Kill a Mockingbird, that idea of what's just and doing what's right. So I really wanted to make a change for people, make a difference for people, and seeing that that could be done through the legal profession really interested me. So that's when and where I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. Along with that, though, I never wanted to be a business owner. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur in any capacity. Turns out I'm both now. So things change, as we all know. So it's no one in my family's been an entrepreneur. It's not like I had that bug from early on or really saw anybody around me wanting to do it. So I really fell into it. But sometimes the best things happen that way. And then in terms of my exposure before I went to law school, and because I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, I set myself up with my first legal job in high school. I did joint enrollment at a general practice firm in Canton. So that was my first legal job. And from there, I went from small firms to medium firms to big law, which I highly don't recommend to people if they have a choice. And most people who've done it don't either. But I got exposure in a lot of different practice areas. So I was in general practice, educational defense, mass torts defense. And then my third year in law school, I got exposed to personal injury on the plaintiff side. And that's what I really fell in love with. So since I fell in love with the idea of being a personal injury lawyer, I really wanted to stick with that. And fortunately, I was able to not have to go insurance defense route before I made a lateral move, which is what a lot of people do in this practice area. I ended up getting a job after law school with a younger attorney who had a small firm, no other attorneys yet. And a lot of promises were made that were not kept. And most particularly the idea of growing with the firm, because that's what I've always wanted, was to be part of a, not family, but, invest my time and effort. I'm a hard worker and then grow with the firm. And it really seemed like that was going to be a good fit. So, after I passed the bar and I was still working for this guy, I was told after the Christmas holidays that I was a luxury he could not afford, which, I don't know how to take that other than just not good. It made me feel, not valued at all, obviously. So that was not good. And then I was looking for another job, obviously, after that, looking to stay on the plaintiff side. I was petrified I was going to have to go insurance defense. So I really held out. And then it was so fortuitous that I ran into somebody who knew of a firm looking for a new associate and got connected, and we hit it off. I mean, it was just the perfect job. There were two other associates that were around my age. Partner running it had been doing this for 30 some odd years. He'd been insurance defense, very relaxed, very big about, you learn by doing. So it wasn't an idea of pulling rank and, just keeping us under his thumb. He really did teach us well in that regard. But as it turns out, things in life don't go the way you plan at all. Sometimes they're outside your control. And about a year and a half after I got that job, in the dream job, my partner committed suicide. He had been stealing money from clients for 8 years. And Obviously, none of us knew it. None of us were on the books or anything like that. And there was no indicators. To say it was shocking is an understatement, obviously. But we all had, and that's literally a whole other story in a book. But we decided to pivot. And the senior associate who had recently become partner, which made it a whole other mess, and myself and one paralegal decided to go out on our own and try to salvage this and make it work. So with the full caseload, my new partner now was trying to deal with the fallout from everything that had happened. But what also ended up happening was I was running the entire practice, dealing with the emotional impact of it anyway. And then also, the very basic day-to-day things. It was a lot. It was a crash course in a lot of things, but in particularly how to run a practice, because I was having to do it. I didn't have any real support from my partner. And understandably, everybody was going through a lot, but I really felt left to my own devices, not in a good way. But like I said, a lot of things happen that you don't plan, but good things can come out of it. So after about a year of doing that, I decided that something had to give. And the reason I decided that was I was in Portugal on a horseback riding trip when my paralegal called me. And she said, I know you're halfway around the world, but I have to get service on this defendant. And I said, I love you, but why are you calling me halfway around the world and asking me this? And she said, I can't get a hold of our partner. And he knew there was a deadline, and she needed authorization to do, an emergency service and pay the extra money and all that. So when I came back into the country, I finally sat down with myself, as I had been doing, but really realized that I just couldn't do it anymore. And not only did I know that, but the reason I felt it was I got to a point one day where I had to go home and call my husband home from work because I was in such a dark place. I have dealt with anxiety and depression that's been managed for a number of years. And it was managed during this time as well, but anybody can only take so much before things just are gonna cave. And that's what happened. And that's when I talk about hitting my rock bottom. And I mean it seriously. I'm not, being flippant when I call, addiction to the status quo an addiction. I genuinely believe it is. And I think sometimes it can almost be worse than other addictions. Not that this is a game of who has a more horrible life or more horrible addiction, but in the sense that it's a socially validated addiction. Whereas some of these other addictions, obviously people want to get help and have resources to get help for them. So my obsession and addiction to wanting to keep this firm going the way it had been, being the lawyer that I perceived I needed to be, that caught up with me along with everything else that had caught up and been happening over that past year. So I decided if I was going to start my own practice that I never wanted or planned to have, why not do it now? So I was able to really end things amicably with my partner. Fortunately, there'd just been a lot of drama up until that point. There was no sense in burning bridges if I could avoid it. I took a full caseload, which is hugely beneficial. So that made a big difference in my ability to hit the ground running. And also they were in all different stages, but they all were in litigation. So for any of you who deal with litigation, it's time consuming, it's financially consuming. So that aside from just starting your own practice and the headaches that come with that, there were a little more challenges along the way. So what I decided was with all of that, I was going to have to make it work for myself. I had been paperless, virtually paperless up until this point. I would have say 70% paperless. And when I started my own practice, I wanted to be 99% paperless. There's just no sense in holding on to documents that take up space, which costs money if you don't need to do it. And we just don't anymore. We don't need to have 5 copies of things that we send to the court. It's nonsensical. And I'll get into that later. But so being paperless made a huge difference. I wanted to keep my overhead low. So I worked from home. I think somebody else mentioned this. So many of my clients either can't come to me, they can't get off work, or they're injured and they don't have the capacity, or they don't have the transportation either anymore or at all. So I would go to clients and meet with them if they wanted to. But honestly, these days, if I get a referral, even if it's not like a really close referral, I talk to clients and they're perfectly fine talking on the phone to me. So they don't have a need to want to come see me in person. So I just decided that I was going to run my own show and be, an advocate for people that, obviously don't have a voice. That's very much that David and Goliath mentality with the personal injury aspect. So that's what I've been doing as a lawyer, but then also I had the opportunity to become an author and tell my story about what happened, which is, like I said, overcoming addiction to the status quo has the backdrop of what happened and why I became a solopreneur and a solo practitioner. And then becoming a speaker about it too, because I think, first of all, mental health is a big passion of mine, probably because I experience it in a very significant way. And as I think a lot of people do, whether they acknowledge it or not. And I want to normalize the conversation amongst our profession and other professionals. So I usually think of zero-sum professions: doctors, lawyers, corporate executives, nurses, and even professional athletes, people that the addiction to the status quo manifests itself very drastically and tends to manifest itself more quickly, I think, as compared to other professions. I truly believe that you don't have to experience trauma to grow or change in your life. And that's not to say that you're not going to have adversity, but you don't have to have, traumatic things happen for you to grow and shift your perspective and what you want to do. So I mentioned before, obviously, about the fact that we're in a very antiquated profession. And I know, we all kind of recognize that, but I really wanted to start there because that's where we have to acknowledge we've been as a profession before we can start changing and, shifting what works and what doesn't work. So obviously the traditional mindset in terms of time, we know it's not 9 to 5, right? It's always a lot longer than that. But generally speaking, 9 to 5, butt in a seat at a desk, that's how you work. You have to be in person in an office to be considered working. In terms of technology, we all know there's paper for everything, and paper, and more paper, and multiple copies of the paper. And it's just insane how much paper I know goes into everybody's practice or has, traditionally. And in terms of appearance, I think this is a big one too, because this really goes to your own internal struggle, I think, with a lot of us, whether we admit it or not. The perception of what, we should be as a lawyer, especially at, like, having a law office, having the law books, the marble conference table, the mahogany desk, having that appearance that shows you're a lawyer. So that goes into that traditional mindset. We're also very antiquated in the fact of, the cost of running a practice. With the traditional mindset, we also have, staff being in an office in person, staff traditionally that are full-time employees. There's no middle ground. Either you are an employee or you're not an employee. In terms of technology, or, what goes into running the cost of a practice is the technology, supplies, advertising, networking, and vendors. It's just all been very old school, and it hasn't shifted or evolved. And I think maybe a lot of that has to do with people staying in the profession longer that have been doing it that old way. But why not change it? There's literally nothing saying that we can't. Also, in terms of where we run our practice and the cost that's associated with that, is having that physical space. I know a lot of times these business leases are for like 10 years, 5 years. I mean, that's an extraordinary amount of time generally, but especially these days with how fast paced things are, being locked into a contract for space for 5 or 10 years is just, it seems asinine to me, not let alone the cost that goes into it. And then, like I mentioned before, the socially validated addiction to the status quo. So I think we have external concerns with this profession in terms of what are our colleagues going to think of us if we decide to be remote? Are we going to be less of a lawyer, right? What's the competition doing? Operating without a traditional, structure, I think, as appealing as it is to people, when you get down to it, people are concerned about what people are going to think of them and their legitimacy as a lawyer. I know I did initially, because when you tell people it's not the same thing that everybody else is doing, you're standing out and you feel like you're being isolated a little bit. And then having connection to a team and colleagues, I know is also a concern for people as well. How am I going to stay connected? And obviously right now we've evolved with COVID, but even before that, people were saying, well, what if you don't have people around you, your team? It's like, I can pick up the phone and call people, right? We have solutions to the problem. It's just, we don't see it as quickly, I think. And then I wanted to also mention some misconceptions, and I think it centers around people in the profession, people that work for us or with us. So we have this idea that hours worked correlates to productivity, and that's just patently false. You don't have, you can work all the hours in the world and still not be productive, right? There's also the misconception that independent contractors, won't allow you to have enough control over people, or they can't be trusted because they're not right with you. They aren't as good as employees. We also believe that management is a top-down approach, right? That's traditionally how management's been done. And for anybody I don't know has a managerial background, it's historically been that way across all businesses. I really propose, and the alternative to that is a servant leadership approach, which is the philosophy that a goal of a leader is to serve. And it's different from the traditional leadership, like I said, of the top down, and it's really building with your team the business. And that is what helps overcome these misconceptions about people, ability to run a team, ability to stay connected, because this is all about people, right? Whether that's internally in our firm or externally, it's staying connected with other human beings. And we also have this perception that people need to be watched. The reality is, if you don't trust somebody to be doing their job, or just generally, but in particular, when you're not in the same building or room with them, they don't need to be working for you, flat out. Like that, let them go. Or we need to reevaluate you, one of the two or both. It's just that's silly. Why would you be stuck with somebody that you don't trust? Your job is to be a lawyer and a manager very often. It's not to babysit. So now that we all know specifically what I'm talking about with regards to the antiquated aspects of our practice or our profession, I want to look at why we should change now. This is, changing to have flexibility of location, to have more money, to have more time, to have more security, to have a better team, to have a better well-being, which, like I mentioned before, is a huge thing for me. Life is entirely too short to go through it being miserable. And I don't care how much you love what you do, you're never going to be on your deathbed going, wow, I wish I worked more and I was more miserable. Nobody's going to do that. So what can we get in terms of location by doing this now? You have the flexibility. Very obviously, you can work from home. You can work while your kids are at dance class in the car. You can be halfway around the world and working. You can take that 2-week, 3-week vacation to Italy and still get work done. Like I said, we're here for a relatively short amount of time, and regardless of what you believe, I think you should enjoy it and live the best version of yourself. And I believe being able to have the flexibility in your life and more freedom in where you are obviously allows you to do that. It also, you don't have to be locked into that lease that I was talking about before. You don't have to pay in terms of money, pay for the cost of having that lease that, it's not necessary. You don't have to pay for full-time employees necessarily if you don't need them. You save time commuting. Time is money, like I mentioned before. And you're not having to pay, to keep up your car for the commuting either. And for women, I know this is like really reducing it to basic things, but makeup and hair costs money, turns out, and it takes time to do. So you don't always have to be doing that if you are working remotely. So like Aaron and Kristen are doing, they don't have to worry about that right now because they can literally turn off their camera. And in terms of time, you get back that time. The goal is, right, you save time, but you don't fill that time with more work necessarily. You can, but the goal is to work more efficiently so you can enjoy your time doing the things that matter to you. And along with that comes with the not commuting to the office, not having to micromanage the time of a team that's not being productive. Because let's be honest, how many times have we either been that person or been in an office where people are just shooting the breeze and nothing's being done and they're on the clock? I mean, I'm not saying you have to work every minute. I don't particularly want to pay for you to work and not be working. So you get the time back to be able to do what you want to do, and not having to manage the distraction of other people is a big part of that time that goes into running a practice. Security, I know there are concerns about security with storage and documents and being a paperless office, but quite frankly, I think it's better than having papers lying around in an office. If you have a cleaning crew coming in, it's just a generalization. I'm talking about people coming into the office, whether that's vendors, if you're not there, whether that's maintenance crews, whether that's cleaning people, whoever's coming into the office, having access to the privileged and private documents is a concern, I think, especially when you have like 5 copies around. Who's ever going to notice if one went missing for some reason, or if somebody took information from it? The security allows you to have, the remote protection as well, because obviously that's something we don't want to sacrifice, the security of our clients and their information just because we want to work remotely. In terms of finding a team, I have found that I have the best team working for me. And I went through the same process as I did when I worked in person in terms of hiring, and I did not have the same experience with in-person people. I think it allows you to find people that are better qualified, that are more passionate about their position, and they don't have to be in your city, let alone able to commute to your office, right? I have 3 paralegals that are all out of state. They've been with me for 2 years. I have 2 admins that are local. So one of them helps with my mail, getting the physical mail out, what little I have. And the other one just happens to be local, and she handles interactions with clients and getting them onboarded, with their contract and things like that. So I think not only do you find the best people for your team to make your business operate efficiently, you also have a happier group of people working. They have their own autonomy, and they have the ability to make their own decisions and not be micromanaged. I mean, do people really enjoy being micromanaged, even if they need it? I don't think they do. So it eliminates turnover as well. I'll touch on that later with the statistic, but people that are happier obviously don't want to leave or feel the need to leave. So there really is a lot to keeping a team together and having it be remote that's still very, very positive, contrary to our misconceptions. And then our well-being, just having the flexibility to say, I need a 15-minute break to go take a nap and reset myself, or I just want to call it quits for the day and, not have people breathing down your neck, and then coming home and working, or being at home rather, and working later in the evening. We're all adults here. I mean, it blows my mind that we have thought for so long, and I know technology has been a huge influence on this, but generally we still have this perception that you have to be button seat 9 to 5 to be a productive member of a business or run a productive business, and it's just not true. And when people are happier, you have a better quality of life, obviously. So obviously I've touched on why we should, but I know what probably most of you want to know is how do we do it? Again, this may be different for you because of your practice area. I know Gay in particular, she still has to do her filings with the courts, physical filings, whereas a lot of us may not have to do that. So of course there's going to be exceptions, but still, generally speaking, there's a lot that you can do to make this happen, make it better, even if you don't want to make the full jump to completely remote. So in terms of physical space, give it up, let it go. Like what's her name sings, let it go, So you don't need it. You just don't need the physical space to, sit somewhere else. Like why have dedicated office space if you don't need it. I have access to conference rooms in 2 different locations in the city. And frankly, if I needed more space, I could rent out another room with another company the same day. Like, it's just not a problem. So if I do need to have depositions, if I do need to meet with a client that wants to meet in person, I go to that space and I meet them there. They don't think any different of it. I'm also not representing people that are, you know, the corporate figures for Fortune 100 companies, but I still think that you can find the right space that's not permanent to convey professionalism, but still save money and allow for that remote work. In terms of mail, packages, deliveries, they're all received at my office that has my mailbox, which is up here in Roswell. So this company, they have 2 locations. They have one in Sandy Springs, right at the perimeter of Abernathy and 400, and then they have one up here in Roswell. And that's where they get all my mail, so I can just literally drive down the road. I live in Woodstock. They also, I'm 99% paperless now. So everything I get that comes in physical gets scanned in the scanner behind me, and then it goes into my shred bin. I literally shred everything that gets scanned in. I don't need it. There's just no reason. Once you have the security in there and the backups, in terms of servers, there's no reason to keep physical copies. Designating space for work in your home, I think, is a crucial thing, especially because people think, oh, just working remotely means like sitting on my couch, sitting at my kitchen table, sitting in bed. Don't get me wrong, if you want to work in bed one day, totally go for it. But I think it's important to have dedicated space in your home where you can feel like you are in that work zone. I do think it kind of delineates at the end of the day where you're working versus your home area. So from a mental aspect, you're not feeling like you're just living and working in the same exact space all day long, because then it's going to take away from your quality time and enjoyment at home itself. In terms of a team, it really does allow you to recruit the best, internally and externally. So I mentioned about my assistants, my paralegals. For me, they each have a role that they fill for every case, as opposed to having a set of cases that they work everything on. I have found, I've done it both ways. I've worked with, firms that have done it both ways. And the reason I do it this way is because the paralegals are happier doing the tasks that they enjoy. And some may think, well, their job is to work for me. I don't, am not particularly worried if they're happy. They need to do what I ask. Cool. People that are happier work harder. So if you figure out what people are good at because they enjoy it, they can fill that void. So as an example, I have one paralegal, KJ. She loves the medical records, and God bless her for it, because there's a lot of them in my practice. And she loves going through, and she's really good and super smart about the codes and pulling out, the information about leading to other issues down the road. She does all of that for me, makes sure all the bills and records get in, gets all the codes, drafts my demands. She helps me with the negotiations and tracking those numbers. She helps preparing me for depositions, so I have all the information about the medical aspects of my case. I have another one, Shannon. She does all my discovery, just literally all of it, going out, coming in. That's what she handles. She also handles my settlement, and my lien reductions on the back end, and she's really good at it. I have another. Cherish, you unmuted yourself.
I wanted to ask a question because I'm
go ahead.
fascinated by this, right? So I'm at a point where I feel like I need more staff, definitely to get all of the operations running. But where did you find these people? And how do you know that they're not
crazy?
Yeah.
So I mean, say it, I'm not going to get offended. So I went to Upwork. Upwork is a website for freelancers, and Fiverr is one for more like creatives. Upwork is more for professionals.
Okay.
So if you go there, you can filter, literally like executive assistants. I have one that I found on there, paralegals, legal assistants. You can find it. You can put your own job posting on there, which works out so much better than putting it on Indeed.
Okay.
Because I made the mistake of doing that when I couldn't find exactly what I wanted the first time around for an executive assistant. I got like 120 applications, resumes from people that didn't remotely come close to what I needed. And I'm always happy to work with people on that whole process, because a lot goes into it. If you don't know what you're doing, it's not that you can't figure it out, but again, time is money. So I use Upwork to find these people, minus my 2 assistants. So full disclosure, one of my assistants is my retired father. He is, because he doesn't have anything better to do. No, he actually has a lot to do, but he's very anal retentive in particular. So I have him do all my document naming and filing in my electronic system. So I know it's done consistently. And he didn't have any legal background. My legal assistant didn't have any that legal background, but I didn't need them to, right? He's just naming files. And yes, that takes time to kind of learn what they are, but I'd almost rather just teach somebody that I know already has a skill set of being very particular and very focused on detail. And then with regards to the legal assistant interacting with clients, it's actually really helpful to have somebody that doesn't have a legal background. She's not overstepping her boundaries in terms of what she's telling them, or has the capacity to officially tell them legally. And she can also bridge that gap for me sometimes when I get that, I won't say tunnel vision, but in the blinders on when you're thinking it from a lawyer's perspective. She can come back to me and be like, I don't really understand this, and I don't think they do either. I was like, oh, okay. And it's just, it helps bridge that gap with our clients. Even though I relate to them very well, we still always have our lawyer hat on. So, and she's local too. It just happens that I met her, and she's actually a stay-at-home mom. Her kids are about to go off to college. So she has the flexibility of wanting to do this. Does that help you?
Yeah. And just as, sorry, because I'm so curious about this. So you're doing all of the interviews obviously online. Do you pay them in the beginning as like on a per project basis to get a feel for what they do? Or do you, like, how do you vet them?
Yeah. So Upwork has it to where you work through their platform initially.
Okay.
You can buy, it's not like they're contracted through Upwork, but you technically have to pay to move off of the Upwork platform.
Okay.
They didn't have that requirement in place when I eventually took my 3 paralegals off there and started dealing with them just exclusively through my firm. So just keep that in mind. But what still is really beneficial is Upwork, you know, it tracks the time that they're putting in. It can take screenshots. I have a problem with that from a legal standpoint. But I get it. I get why people want to see that. And quite frankly, even if I didn't get screenshots, and the way I know that they're doing their job is I get the work product. Like if they don't get it to me or it's done wrong, they're not doing their job correctly. So, and of course there's a learning curve. Even though these people have the skill set, they have to figure out how I want it done. But I interview them. We start working on the platform. So we have that accountability, like they know they're going to get paid. You know, I know that the work's going to be tracked. You can also see that they have reviews on these people too. So one of the huge benefits I have found is for anybody who does employment or is hiring by our employment law, you know, like when somebody calls you about a previous employee, you can't really say a whole lot legally about them and their performance. So when I go on Upwork, I get to see what people really think of these individuals and their abilities, which I don't see what, you know, I think it's great. I think it's great for both parties at the end of the day. So there's reviews, talks about the different projects they've done. And then it's, you know, of course, it's like anything else. If there was a random outlier for somebody who has 5 stars, okay, that was just a weird one-off experience type thing. But that's how you really pay attention and see if they're going to be a good fit for you. And I've had to let a couple of people go. I had a legal assistant that didn't work out. She just wasn't delivering. I had a paralegal on paper that looked great, didn't deliver. So I hired slowly, but I fired quickly. Just for anybody who runs a practice or handles any of the hiring, you can't afford to hold on to people that aren't working out once you've given them the proper opportunities to obviously do it. And as these people aren't employees, I don't have to pay them benefits. I don't have to pay them for the time that I don't need them for. And I also don't have to worry about as much the legalities that come with, you know, terminating what you would a normal employee. And I'm not trying, when I say that, I'm not trying to screw anybody over. I want to be upfront and authentic with these people, but it works for them just as much as it works for me. Now, one of my paralegals, she works for me almost full time. 2 other paralegals work for me part-time. Of those other 2, one of them works for a couple other firms in her time that she doesn't work for me. And then my 2 admins work less than part-time. So, and it works. It works for what we have done. They're not working 40 hours a week. I'm not paying for time that I don't need them.
Okay. No, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And then in terms of receptionists, so when I talk about giving up the physical space, people, of course, get worried about internal issues. How's the infrastructure going to really operate at that point? You don't need to become a receptionist. Don't worry. My office that I have, access to up in Roswell, and they have another one down, like I said, at the perimeter, they have 4 receptionists. So 2 at each location, but they phone rings to all of them. So they are able to obviously answer all my phones. They're very good about following any scripts that you want them to follow, getting any information that you want them to get. And for me in particular, I say, okay, if these people call, send them to this person. If this person asks specifically for one of my paralegals, send them to there. If it's spam, just send it to this general voicemail box. And I have an internal tree set up for my phone system that, they can send it off to, but they also give you a phone number that you can use with their office and a voicemail if you wanted to. I personally did not use that. I use it to have it ring to that office, but if I ever want to leave, I don't want to be beholden to them with that phone number. So that's some of the logistical stuff that you don't know until you get into it. Also, people think that, they can't get people for certain positions, whether it's a bookkeeper, CPA, I think is a little bit easier. People know that they can go find someone for that service, business coach, banker type thing, or website and SEO. You don't have to have these people internally. And I think most traditionally it's like bookkeeper or somebody doing the finances in the firm. And then the technology. You do not have to have these people internally. You don't need them full time. I mean, really, I can't foresee anybody needing full time unless you're Morgan and Morgan, right? Or fill in the blank of another big billboard firm, right? That has the capacity to do that. Find people that are the best version of them out there. They don't have to worry about commuting to your office. They don't have to worry about coming to a location, during office hours. I can literally interact with my website and SEO person any time of day. And she can do all the work she needs remotely. Same thing with finding, a business coach or networking groups or CPA. I'm a huge proponent of creating a team around you that helps you be a better professional. And the flexibility of being remote really allows for that much more. In terms of utilities too, don't pay double. I mean, you are, think about it. If you go to an office every day, you're paying your mortgage, you're paying for space in your office, you're paying for the, power at home, you're paying for the power and utilities in some capacity at your office. You're paying for a phone at your office, you're paying for your phone at home. Why? I mean, really, what benefit are you getting at that point? And I understand clearly people have children and this is a problem and challenge at home, but you can get around that. So generally, why not just pay one time and split the difference between the two? So you have half of it going towards your, your home personal taxes and half of it being written off through your business. It just doesn't make sense at the end of the day, especially I don't have children. I'm not going to have children. So all the more reason my home is just being filled with animals that have nice air conditioning, right? Like I want to take advantage of it too. And in terms of the technology, I think this is a huge reason of why we're able to do this now, why the profession has been antiquated for so long. But there's this big gap right now between like the antiquated, we couldn't do it and now we can. And it still seems like people are holding on to that the death grip, like they do not want to give it up, right? It's 2021. Lock it up, embrace it. If you don't know how to do it, find somebody who does that can teach you. I get it. It's scary. Change is scary, even if it's for the better. But Lord knows that I have been better off for embracing change than I haven't been. So, and I'm one of those people that can help you do it. So if you ever have questions or concerns, I'm happy to be a resource. And I'm also going to be doing coaching and helping people learn how to do this better too and actually implement it. So virtual meetings, I think we're all really proficient at that, right? Because of COVID and everything. But time tracking and payment, easy for me to say, and paying independent contractors there's plenty of resources out there for that too. I go through Square. Don't do what I did. Here's a lesson. I tried to go through PayPal initially, and there's fees attached to it. Then there's concerns if you're paying for services versus just a friend. So I tried to go through Google Pay, but Google Pay wouldn't let me pay with certain formats of payment. Like, it just was a hot mess. Just go with Square. And the reason I say Square, it's a very entry level program, but it tracks the time. It allows you to do direct payments to people, which everybody loves. It has all in one location, and it only charges me $5 for every time I pay people. So I pay people weekly. I pay my independent contractors weekly. So I pay $25 a week to do payroll. But, and I don't know if that's like a lot or not compared to other like actual payroll companies. But the reality is I don't have all the other things that I have to do because they're not full-time employees. Document storage. So don't just use Google Drive. It's not sufficient in terms of security. And there's tons of programs out there that I could talk about. And I've gone through a few of them. I've used Dropbox in the past. I wasn't as happy with it in terms of not security so much as inadvertent deleting or syncing with programs or computers of my people. So sometimes it would sync up with somebody's computer, and if they had deleted something off of their computer, folders might get misplaced. Luckily, we had like a parent version or a hard version and back end of it, but it was a headache to deal with. So I have found some other sources that I prefer over that. Email systems. Even if they're independent contractors, they need to have their own email. Do not have them emailing from, Jane Doe 332@gmail.com. Like, don't do it. Just pay. Just pay to have your people have it. You can always change the email for the user if they don't work out for you. You also have access to their emails at the end of the day through all the data on the back end. And there's different levels of that too that you can have in terms of document retention on the back end that you may need. And then processes. Because this is different, you should have processes in place for your practice anyway, whether you're solo or not. But most importantly, because it's all electronic and these people aren't in the same building as you, you need to spell out how you want things done so people can reference it. You can't expect people to read your mind, and you can't expect people to do their job well if you don't tell them how to do it. And so you really have to have a resource for them, and you don't need to be that resource every day, right? You don't need to be the person they come to for an hour and a half to go through the same things when you can have it written down and in place and updated as needed. So my key takeaways from this is whether we like it or not, the future is here. And I think it is here to stay. I'm going to touch on that in a second. Why not change? There are so many benefits to shifting to a remote platform, even, just in a minimal sense, that they're really they outweigh any cons to the situation. And you can do it. I know it's scary. I know there's a lot out there and people get overwhelmed. But I truly have gone through this. And even if you weren't coming to me as a resource, you can find ways to do it in incremental steps so it's less overwhelming, because I can appreciate that. So what I wanted to support with this, some of the statistics, 73% of teams will have remote workers by 2028. And that's actually from Upwork, that website I mentioned before. That's a lot. That's a lot. And then in terms of change, in US companies that allow remote working have a 25% lower employee turnover rate. And when it comes down to it, training employees takes time and money. And I mean, yes, you should let them go if they're not doing a good job, but that means you are hiring somebody else and you're training somebody else. So to the extent that you can mitigate that, everybody's happier for it, and you're more efficient as a business owner as well. Like I said, you can do it. 77% of remote employees say they're more productive when working from home. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're happier. They can stop when they want to stop and go take a break, and they're not just on the clock, not doing anything. And they have the ability to control their time and how they manage themselves at the end of the day, more so than if they're just expected to sit in a seat 9 to 5 behind a desk. So I am an open book. For anybody who knows me, I will tell you the truth, even if you don't like it, but in a nice way. I believe in being authentic and open. So if you have any questions, I am happy to answer them.
A question, and thank you, Kathryn, for sharing this information. It has been helpful. As far as any of the lessons that you've learned from working remotely, I know you talked about, being quick to fire, slow to hire. You also talked about the lessons as far as PayPal versus Square. But ultimately, what would you say was the biggest lesson you learned in your journey for remote work?
I learned that I had to delegate. I have been very A-type my entire life, and I won't say control freak, just I like control. But at the end of the day, you have to trust people to do what you tell them to do and what they say they're going to do. You have to let go. That is the only way this is going to work. And like I said before, first of all, you don't need people working for you that you don't trust if you're sitting in the same room with them. But most importantly, if you don't see them every day or you've never met them in person, you've got to be willing to delegate to them and trust them when you delegate. So it's trust and delegation, I think, are the biggest things that I've learned because I can't do it all, right? That's why I've hired these people. And people think, oh, you have 5 employees. Well, I don't have 5 full-time employees that I'm paying, but I still need their help, and I wouldn't be able to run efficiently if I didn't have it. So yes, it's initially scary, but it's the best thing that I've done. And the biggest lesson I've taken away from that really is the trust and delegation.
Thank you. And I have a quick follow-up question to that.
Sure.
So I know you have your law practice, and then you're also an author, and you have speaking engagements. Do you have a separate team for each of those aspects of your career, or do you have different people or some of the same people on different aspects of it?
So my one paralegal who does all my litigation initiation and everything, and she's also kind of my firm administrator. I wish I could replicate her. She's the one that works virtually full time for me, and I wish she could handle everything, but that's not reality. So I would rather have her on the legal side. And that's where all the other people are working on the legal side of things. I did hire an executive assistant recently, a couple months before my book launch, to help me find opportunities for speaking, things like that. And I have a whole other LLC that I run it through. I have a whole other email system that I run it through. And she lives in California. So I had to go through a few people to find a good fit. And that's where I tried Indeed for the first time. I was like, oh dear God, no, never again. I'm never going to do it again. So that's what I've done. I've really kept it separate.
Thank you.
Hey, Kathryn, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I transitioned to a new firm like in the middle of COVID. So I've always pretty much been remote 100% of the time. And one thing I honestly miss is just getting that interaction with coworkers. And I really miss that. So for you, like on your legal side, do you foster that kind of sense of team, and how do you do that when everybody is working remotely?
Yes. So I talked about it earlier, but really the best way to run any practice or work with colleagues in a remote sense is to build that team and that foster that mentality. So you have to work harder, I would almost say, just because you don't have the physical presence, but even still, I think there's a lot of work that can be done for people that work in person with each other. I have weekly meetings with my people. Everybody's on the call, not just my paralegals, my admins too. Even though they don't have the legal background, they learn from the conversations, and it creates buy-in. So making people, even with my one paralegal that works for other firms, feel a part of the team and feel invested in the outcome of my business has been huge. I mean, who can say that they've really kept employees as long as they have? Generally these days with people hopping around, but I have, 3 people. One I met by happenstance when I went to Arizona for a trip, but 3 paralegals virtually all across the country that have stayed with me, and I've never met 2 of them in person. So you create that family. I mean, it's still business, but you are creating like a little family. And you give them the ability and the authority and autonomy to communicate with each other as well. So you don't have to always be the intermediary. Initially you do, again, to kind of facilitate what your, expectations are for the practice. But after that, you again have to delegate and trust that these people are adults and can do what they say they're going to do. And so they can communicate with each other. We text, we email, but I think most importantly, we have the weekly meetings. So we actually get to see each other's faces and talk to each other about the cases and strategy. And as needed, I have, occasional meetings with the paralegals from there. But generally speaking, it's just the weekly meetings that we do.
Great, thanks.
Mhm.
So just another question, Kathryn. So in terms of like evaluating their performance and like, do you set out the expectations at the onset and you say, okay, these are the deliverables that I want you to have? Like, how do you manage all of that?
Yeah, so I have, I'm blanking on the phrase right now. I want to say scope of work. That's not what I mean. Roles, outlined. And I really tailor it to that person. And there's a book out there, E-Myth, for anybody who's read it. I believe in what it is it basically says you should be able to replicate your business like McDonald's at the end of the day, right? You should not build your business to fit people. You should, have people to fit your business. I do and don't agree with that. I agree with that in principle, but I do believe that you should tailor your business to fit certain people insofar as they do a better job when it's something they feel comfortable with, when they have certain expectations that they can actually meet. I'm not going to ask somebody to do something that they can't and then fire them because they can't do one thing, right? I might find somebody else to fill that gap or delegate that task to another paralegal. So I have, all their roles and specifics about their roles, like who's going to do settlements, who's going to do discovery, who's going to initiate litigation, who's going to oversee, getting the skip traces done with our person that works with us, for finding the defendants. And if it's too much for somebody, I say, okay, who has the capacity to handle this other task and who's willing to either learn it if they don't know it or handle it if they already know how. So that's the other biggest thing I've learned about this is you have to be flexible and you have to be willing to pivot. If it's not working, don't keep doing it. You're not proving anything to anybody and you're just making it more frustrating for yourself. So if there's a way to massage a situation when you have multiple people and shift things around to keep the good people, but have it be more efficient, then definitely do that. In terms of feedback, I don't want to say handhold in the beginning, but I am very much available for people to contact me and get answers to their questions, especially starting out and getting feedback. Even if they've been doing this for 20 years, I will still edit letters and send it back to them so they know what I want. Of course, after a certain point, I expect that you've figured it out. And I've told you enough times, you should be able to do it. I don't do formal evaluations. And again, I don't have the concerns from from an employee law aspect as much because of it. But I also believe firmly in the fact that if there's a problem, you don't wait a damn year to tell somebody. You don't wait till their feedback after a year to broach that topic. You want to go ahead and deal with it right then. So if I have problems, I sit down with the person, quote unquote, and talk to them about it. And I'm always approaching it from an understanding perspective. Again, I think this really goes into the management aspect and being more of a servant leader as opposed to top-down approach. What can I do to help you? Is there something that I haven't done, haven't given you the resources for, haven't told you how I wanted it done? And if it's not, say, okay, is there something else going? You don't have to tell me, but is there something going on in the background that maybe is keeping you distracted or keeping you from getting things done? Just kind of dig a little bit more and have these conversations to get to the root of it. And then if you realize, like I did with one paralegal, she just wasn't doing the work, so I fired her. It's one of those things that things can be good on paper, but you'll figure out real quickly if they're able to do the job for you and if they're doing the job, period. So that's how I manage my people.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
I have to run, but Kathryn, I just want to say thank you so much. And
Yeah.
I did have one question about
Sure.
what payroll company are you using?
So I'm just using Square.
You're doing it all through, okay, that's what I
Mhm.
thought I heard, but I was like, let me just double check.
Yeah, just doing it through Square.
Okay, and then I use LawPay. In my field, obviously, I getting client payments and you're not,
Yes.
yeah. So, and so I use LawPay for different transactions. I just started using Venmo and Zelle just through the pandemic, and I was like super afraid of using that because I was worried about the complications of things. But honestly, it's been pretty smooth once as soon as I track everything really well and I make sure, and it's only just a few clients, so it works out, but it's easier and for most clients, and it's cheaper because I don't pay any credit card transaction fees when they pay through Zelle or Venmo.
Yeah. So keep an eye on that though. I think Zelle's a little more flexible with doing it through businesses, but do look into that because I know sometimes at a certain point, if you do too many transactions and it kind of throws up a red flag with some of them, they'll stop you from being able to do it. And then you have to shift everything and track where all the money's come from and get all the data transferred. So Square is helpful in that regard. It does allow for easy, invoicing, and they can go to a website and pay, and it's all taken care of on the back end. But yeah, there are the credit card fees.
Yeah. Okay. But thank you guys so much. Cherish,
Of
nice
course.
to see you, everyone. Nice to meet you all. And I hope to see you all soon.
Yes, yes. Thank you for joining.
Thank
Does
you.
anyone else have any other questions?
Did you just that good of a job?
No, I mean, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, there are, I think you addressed how you manage it. I am interested, did you do a lot of research? Because, right now I'm in a lease, and it's great and everything, but just in terms of flexibility, how much research did you put into, picking the office location, right? Because like you want something, because it sounds like you have a great setup in terms of, hey, this person, the whole having a receptionist already built into the office price and then the ability to expand. But like, how did you choose something different from like, a Regis versus another?
Yeah, so I worked in a Regis.
Okay.
With the other firm, and it's just exorbitantly expensive, first of all. Second of all, the people that they have doing the reception, they don't do any warm transfers. It is like they literally answer the phone and transfer it. Like they're not even interacting with the person. So those were two hits against them.
Okay.
I did look at other places. I did look at, what is it? It's not Upwork, it's WeWork.
Yes, yes.
They're outrageously expensive. I mean, it's really cool. It's hip. That's great. But they have glass walls between people that are like the bathroom in a New York City apartment. I mean, it's and as much as I don't need extra space.
Yeah.
But there's also issues with confidentiality, right? So that was another concern for me. And then probably the biggest thing, quite frankly, is I live, like I said, up at the corner of Cobb, Cherokee, and Fulton counties. So I wanted something that was close for me to go get my mail from. And this is a that does that. If I had to, I could drive further in. But this worked out. It was a great fit. It's a very reasonable price. That was another part of this, is they do a lot of a la carte. Most places don't. It is a base level, and the base level is expensive, and you just don't need all of that. So that's why I've been really happy with them. I wish they, for everybody else's sake, they maybe had things in the city more. But still, if you're not having to go out there all the time, it may be worth it.
Right.
Especially with it being right there on 285 and 400. I mean, it's not like it's hard to get to.
Mm-hmm. And have you ever looked at because one of my clients actually just did this, but a virtual mailbox where they scan in everything?
I have not.
What are your thoughts?
I do have some concerns with information.
Okay.
The security of information in that regard.
Right.
I think if I decided, obviously, to like move across the country and still practice in Georgia, then that would be something I would consider. I would obviously vet them out and make sure like what protocols do they have in place to make that possible. But yeah, it's definitely something out there that you can do. That's another reason I have an admin here that's close by. Like I said, my dad is more happenstance, but if I had to have the other one do it, I could give her the key and she could go get the mail if I'm out of town or something, and I could get her a scanner and she could scan it in. So it really, you can make it work, but yeah, that's my concern with that one. And since I'm close by, I just do it myself.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I do want to let y'all know two last things. First, my goal is to use speaking, writing, and coaching to really authentically help people, professionals in particular, focus on the self-care, life balance, and overcoming the status quo. I'm very passionate about that. So if it's something that's interesting to you and you want more help with, reach out to me. I would love to work on something with you. And the best place to connect with me is on my website. Actually is at my personal website, kathrynfburmeister.com/#connect. And it takes you literally to all my social media, all the ways to get in touch with me. So.
Well, thank you so much. This was so useful. And we are super, super excited for your new book. And I'm definitely going to share it online. And we will share your information. And we've got this recording. So I know that some people had to leave early, but then we also wanted to replay it. We'll probably have with your permission, on LinkedIn or something.
Of course.
But thank you. June, do you have any last words?
No, I just want to thank everyone for coming. And Kathryn, I want to thank you again. I'm amazed at how much you do in your day. So
June, me too.
It blows me away. But I also, I love the fact that you, as much as you are doing, that you're so open to helping anyone that wants some advice or needs some assistance. That's just so generous. And so was your time today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you. And we'll let you know when our next Lawyers Who lunch will be, and we'll send you some information. So have a fantastic and productive week.
Thank everybody.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.